Welcome to Forging a Life podcast with Coach Christine Clark. Forging a Life is a Sunglow transformation production aired on Transformation Talk Radio and all your favorite podcast platforms. If you own a business, have a side hustle, desire to make the leap into self-employment, or just love human interest stories, Forging a Life podcast is for you. Christine Clark is an internationally certified transformational life coach. She is the coach for your entrepreneurial life, and these are her people. Jump into the fire with those forging success on their own terms with courage, tenacity, and resilience. These are men and women you could easily meet on the street in your own community. Gain wisdom, insight, knowledge, and inspiration each episode as these business owners get transparent with Coach Christine Clark, sharing their passions, challenges, and origin stories. This is Forging a Life.
Hello, this is Coach Christine Clark. Welcome to this episode of Forging a Life podcast. My amazing guest is Paintball Pete from Australia. Pete has been passionate about paintball for over 30 years. He is a top flight player. He has been a partner and manager of fields in Australia as well as in the United States. He has traveled internationally to up-level and create paintball fields. He now resides in Rock Hill, South Carolina, running Palmetto Hills Paintball Field. Pete is a passionate, genuine, cool guy, and I am delighted to share this interview with you. I'm delighted to have you here and to be doing this with you today. This is awesome. You are owner of Palmetto Hills Paintball Field. What's your...
Yeah, that's the way I like it.
So did you guys buy that outright? Do you own it?
No, we purchased the business off her, off a lady that had been here since 94. And her and her husband passed away about 11 years ago. We've just gone, oh, well, we've done okay up at Command Decisions, and where we had the other paintball field for those that are listening and don't know. Mm-hmm. We had this field in Taylorsville, North Carolina, and I saw an opportunity here when this came up, and I spoke to my wife Kathy and I'm a field manager at Command Decision and said, this is what's happened. This place has got a lot of potential. And the one who gave up the most was my amazing wife, Miss Kathy. She let me sell the house, and I'm putting a double wide down here on the actual property and actually living. And the property owners do know that we are interested in attempting to be able to buy it, and we're just hoping, because they've given us an 8-year lease, over the next 8 years we can hopefully come to some agreement.
Okay, so you purchased and own the business. The land is still belongs.
The land.
Yeah, rent the land. Okay, with the option to purchase, and you got an 8-year lease agreement.
Yes, that's correct. That's
awesome.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping they'll give us. We're hoping down the track that they'll would look at selling it and maybe selling it to us. So that's what we're hoping.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as the American government will let me stay over here. Your
visas continue?
Well, yeah. The reapplication is in before it as we speak, and I'm hoping that in light of the pandemic and the way the finances for a lot of businesses went up and down over the last 12 months, that they'll extend my visa for another 5 years. Yeah.
You've been in paintball for over 30 years?
Yeah, that's correct.
I
first picked up a paintball gun in 1985, late 85, and I haven't stopped doing it since.
Tell me about your experiences playing and then choosing to run businesses in Australia. Tell me about, because you were really an activist. I mean, you worked to, well, you pushed to really open the possibility in the game up, because Australia was pretty strict on who could play, how old you had to be, people are they still not allowed to own their own paintball guns, that they had to be stored at the field and all that?
No, thankfully that stopped a lot of years ago, with the help of, other field operators besides myself, in our industry association, conglomeration, gathering, whatever you would like to put it.
Yeah.
And, over the years, we've managed to clarify rules, make it more easy and obtainable, to the point where, now it's easier to be able to get a license and a permit to own one. That it's made a little bit easier, but you still got to have a license. You still got to have a permit to get one.
To in Australia to buy and own a paintball gun marker.
Yes, that's
marker,
exactly right. In some states, it's they have their little niche laws over it, and but thankfully, a competition scene. There's a few of them around the country that move around the country and are successful, and the occasional big game is to be held in facilities in different states, and players to be able to travel around and go to these things. We wouldn't get them in the 500s of people, but anyway, up to about 350 people would turn up at some of these bigger games. But it's still a lot of bother to have a paintball gun. It's not something you can just, like you can now, just go and rent one and go out and play. To own one, you do have to jump over hurdles, in a sense, to have one.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about running fields in Australia. You said you played your first game in 1995, right?
In 1985. You're making
85, excuse me.
Older now. Look, my wife read an article in a Reader's Digest magazine about this game they called the survival game. I think she did it in 83 or 84, she told me about. And I was in my local area, and I saw a caravan that was painted a camo, and on the side it had skirmish on the side. And as I drove past, I've gone, hey, that's the name of that, what they called that thing in America, I'd said to my wife, where they could shoot each other with these marking pistols and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I must look into that. Well, the next minute, a month or so later, we're up in Queensland where it was legal to play skirmish. So I went and had a game at it, and it was just like, oh, this is amazing. Came back to where we lived, got in contact with this guy in our state, and he said, yeah, as long as you got a shooter's license, you could play it, which I did have, thankfully. And then about 3 months into being able to just play this little backyard type paintball game, skirmish game, the powers that be put the paintball guns on the prohibited firearms list.
So you had just gotten started, and then they took your markers away.
Well, yeah, this one business, and it was to the point where they're knocking on the doors early mornings to get, you need to hand over all those guns we know you got. And, even though they're not guns, this is what they were. And they confiscated them. Well, the game went underground for a couple of years. Not many played it. And then Australia's richest man, Kerry Packer, helped get it legalised to the point where it was, inspected in front of the officials to be, and they decided to give it a go as long as there were certain conditions. And there was 3 of us in New South, 4 of us in New South Wales, all frothing at the mouth to be able to start a paintball business and be among the first. And yeah, so in October 91, I was fully legalised, and away we went, and we started paintball field at Mount White, which, turned into something that, my family was very thankful for.
Right.
That, that we were allowed to do paintball in this one particular area, and fantastic sport from the property area. The property area had loads of atmosphere. In the end, we were classified as the boutique paintball field in New South Wales. Because of the service that we gave. There was lunch included. You had your own groups. You could only come if you had a deposited appointment. You couldn't just drive up and say, "Hey, I want to play paintball today." So it was a wonderful thing for us all. And in that time, I got to help start the competition scene in Australia. I started the competition referees organisation, and refs, that travelled around Australia, and myself managed to referee around the world, New Zealand, Malaysia, a little bit in the UK, and a few other bits and pieces.
So you ran a boutique field,
yeah.
which is really cool. I mean, to be able to have people by reservation only, be able to, provide a little more service, in my mind, that really kind of up levels game of paintball itself.
Yeah.
And then you put together a referee for referees to get training
teams and training. Yeah, of that. And we would travel around Australia refereeing the local major competitions in each state. And, in the end, we were getting players, guys that were, when we come to the Australian Masters and we knew two teams, I'd pick the referees that we'd fly in from other states to help referee the two fields.
So it's a real professional sport with trained referees. And what makes for a good referee?
I hope you understand when I say you can feel it and see it in their heart, and it's in their head. And they were ex-competition players, and that was the main stipulation. You just couldn't
they had to have played the game and knew it.
Yeah, understood the animal that they were refereeing.
Yeah, important.
Yeah, so I have a nickname for them. They're called the high maintenance men, and you need high maintenance referees to outwit them. Yeah, because unfortunately, when there's prizes and prize money, it brings the worst out in a lot of people. They tend to cheat, and even though they don't feel like they're robbing from anybody, but technically, they're thieves.
So you gotta have refs that know the game and can call people on their stuff and keep it hoil. Yeah. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, well, people put a lot of money, time, and effort into it. It's not as if we just go down to the local park and throw a football around and we won. That's all you've done is put a bit of effort in and had some fun trying to do it. But here it's you got to pay to get there, you got to pay to play, you got to pay to get home, got to pay to eat. And to get that money, you've got to work hard.
Right.
Maybe save a little bit of money. So, that's one of the main things. You've got to appreciate the time, money, and effort, and help that go across the board.
So you've owned and run paintball since 1991.
That's correct.
And how many years did you run fields from Australia?
In Australia, it was over. My own personal one was 22 years. 21 years. I then bought into a Sydney field for 3 years. I then toured around and worked in a field in the UK. I went and helped to advise on rebuilding fields in Bali, in Fiji, and other things around Australia too as well. So, not only, do I help design, I also, get involved in the building and things like that.
What do you enjoy most?
Well, I used to say that the social life and, and being amongst them all. But, to me now it's from the time I get up in the morning to the time I go to bed. Even though it gives me a headache, I love it to death.
So tell me about the love of paintball.
Well, it makes it a bit hard. Well, it's in my heart. As you can see, just trying to talk about it makes me a little bit sentimental. I'm thankful. If you'd have said to me nearly 30 years ago that I played the roles, been to the different parts around the world, meet people such as yourself and your husband and things like that, I would have laughed at you, all from a game of paintball, put my kids through college, give us wonderful homes. It helped us make lovely people.
Thank you for sharing that, Pete. Yeah, it's all right. That's cool. I think it's rare that people do something that they enjoy so much and can be grateful for everything it's given them. Obviously, you have a passion for paintball.
Yes, it's like I was born for it.
Yeah.
It sure did. Oklahoma did that. Oklahoma D-Day, 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
So you came over to the United States and played the Oklahoma D-Day, which is in Oklahoma by at least a couple of miles anyway. And was that the first scenario paintball game you'd played, or had you done other scenario games?
I had played some other scenario games, but it wasn't until I'd actually, just some scenario games in Australia, in the scenario game, in the good days, we'd probably get about 250, 300, but, back then wasn't a lot of us doing it because they're more caught up in tournament paintball than anything else. And we played a scenario game in Coffs Harbour in New South Wales in late 87. We got, I had a friend, Richard McConaughey, say, hey, there's this big game in Oklahoma that they recreate D-Day. You camp there for a week and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, do you want to go? And I spoke to my wife then and she said, well, you turned 50 that year. Why don't you go and I'll shout you for it for your 50th birthday. And so I went, I played. We got involved with the Cairns Scots and Ronan and others that
Mm-hmm.
and it was like we're playing these big games. There's thousands of people, 4,800 people made that year at Oklahoma
4,000 and the biggest
800.
Yeah, 4,800.
That was their biggest year. Players, and I'm telling you now, the euphoria that it gave me, the exhilaration that gave me was just. I let out the big scream. I was born for this. And before I got back to Australia, I'd already had my son start building the scenario section of the field at our Newcastle field because we had two at that stage. Because there was a place that was made for it there. So anyway, that's what and I met everybody in Surrey and whatnot, and I didn't miss. And then I met your husband, I think in 2010, I think it was 2008, 2009, 2010, and you're two wonderful boys that are now as tall as all hell,
right?
And whatnot. And was amazed, and as I said, we wrote a small piece on it and produce that to the government to show how families and the age group doesn't really matter on how old they are when they play, and they can deal with it. Yeah,
because I remember that you got images and pictures and footage of Daniel because he was 10 years old at that the first time that Howard and Ben and Daniel went to D-Day.
Yeah,
and then that was you took that back to take to the
powers that be.
The powers that be to say we can lower the age limit. What was the age limit in Australia in 2010?
In 2010, it had been lowered to 16.
Okay.
And we were pushing for 14.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And when we were showing them that age that they were playing, that it was to example that even at the age of 10, they are capable of playing and dealing with the game. No, we're not asking to drop it to 10. We're asking you to drop it to 14. And because at that stage, I'd done some travelling, but not a lot of European or American paintball. Mainly, my areas, Malaysia, New Zealand, Bali, Taiwan, that sort of thing. Anyway, they took it all into account, but it still took another 6-7 years before it even, before they even decided to even talk about it.
You chose to immigrate to the United States.
Oh yeah. The business I bought into, I didn't like it too much. It's a bit hard owning your own business and then buying in, and unfortunately not being the major shareholder just gave you sort of like you could voice your opinion, but you didn't have the final say.
Okay.
And that's and a few other things that were going on too as well, because you don't see behind the curtain until you join in, and once I got behind the curtain, I realised that this isn't for me. So I had a 3-year contract, so I kept my word. I stayed, and I spoke to my wife at that stage, Kathy. Oh no, my girlfriend at that stage. She was a widower, and I spoke about what I was, going to America, not to necessarily do paintball. So she was prepared to give it a go, and I was prepared to give it a go, and so we sold up with the chance of starting a small business over in America. We had to do business plans. We had to show where we got all our money from.
Right.
American government wanted to know 10 years back, how did you buy your house that you're going to sell to come over? And when you bought that house, how did you buy that house? Where did you get that money from?
Wow.
And it's, oh yeah, we really had to jump through hoops to come over. Well, anyway, we finally decided that, this is what we're going to do. Sydney, Australia was having a massive real estate boom. We got a really good amount of money for the beach house we had, and we sold everything and packed everything in a sea container and followed it on about 3 or 4 weeks after. And Kathy and I come over, and we weren't long over here, and I got offered to take the lease over of Command Decisions. Well, that just how could I say no? Not for the mere fact that it's Command Decisions, holder of the some of the biggest paintball events in the it's the 3rd oldest paintball field in the world.
I never knew that. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, how can I say no? Well, I didn't say no. I said yes, and I've had that for 3 years. Well, I had this other business which didn't go well at all, so it was lucky that I did take over the paintball business, and stuck with it for 3 years, and saw a few hurdles that I didn't want to really jump over or try and work around, and it was just like And this place here at Palmetto Hills came up, and we spoke to Kathy, and as I said, in the early stages, and because I said the house would be always hers, and she let us sell the house and sell that, and that's all sitting in the bank now. We're just with other monies that we do have, and building a 30 by 60 foot mobile home on the property and live here for the next 8 years.
Now, you're living in the double wide right now. Are you building a house?
Actually, we're not living in the double wide right now.
Okay.
Out the front where the house is going to go, we have a caravan. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Right. Well, that's the dummy caravan. Right. Because there's 3 of us, we've taken over it's an old golf course here, and it changed to a paintball field back in 94, right? And where the pro shop is, which
That's where you are right now. Yep.
That's where we are right now.
Uh-huh.
And out the back is an old cafeteria bar type thing. If you understand that I don't know if they use the word cafeteria over here. Anyway, yeah, so we've got our double queen size blow up mattress, and we got the Aussie barbecue in there, and we got gas heater in there, and a few bits of storage stuff. And we've been living in there since the middle of November. Kathy came here what was it? She came just before Christmas.
Okay.
So this is where we've been living, and we've got to wait till the end of April for the house to be delivered. And I'm frantically trying to find someone to help advise me to put it in. I've messaged 6 people so far, and I can't seem to get a reply out of anybody. So, in the next week or two, if I haven't found anyone, I'm going to have to panic and go to the mobile home people that are building the house and say, you're going to have to pull your finger out and help me.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's about the only headache I have.
So the house is started, or not even?
Well, we paid the deposit last year. So they said mid to late April. But I'm hoping it'll be the end of April. They'll have it ready. I still need to know exactly where it's got it, what we got to do, where we want to have it, what we got to do to prepare the ground for it, for the septic tank and a few other bits and pieces.
So you're going to continue to live on site.
Yeah. Well, Kathy said she prefers to stay in where we are. Even though we've got, it's got a double bed there. It's, we've got the heater and air conditioning set up. There's a shower, there's a toilet. We shower in there and that. And but the rest of the time we base ourselves out the back.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a culture. It's a bit of a. I've always had a nice house around me and things like that. And here we're just in a old bistro with toilets that don't work in the bistro. You've got to come out here and go to the toilet in the pro shop. So it's a bit much of a night time when you get old, but
you're kind of camping out.
Oh yeah, especially when it's in the minuses.
So tell me a bit, what you want to build there with Palmetto Hills Field. What's your
why we want to build here? Well, I've always wanted my own paintball field where I could get up and be at work. I can still get up and switch off, just drive out of the place and just go for a walk around the place, because we're on nearly 40 acres and there's, it's all in all not too bad out here. And even just going to the local shops, it's new for us. It's just I've always wanted my own paintball field, and to here, this is the closest step that I can get so far. I've always had a half hour to an hour's drive to my paintball fields, some a little bit longer in the early days, and I'm over that. I want to be able to get up and say, this is my place, and I've got the lease. I've got, as long as I tell them what I'm doing, they said, you don't necessarily have to ask, but, we would appreciate you tell us what you're doing if you're going to change anything. And they've been great. I've always asked first, and, they've said yes to everything that I've applied for, and even, to the point of, excavating areas and all this type of stuff. So I'm just hoping that, they can see I've got a love for the place, and a couple of years down the track, I'll put them under pressure again to, hey, guys, you interested in selling? And then it'll come true. I have my own paintball field. I can do what I want, even though I've been very fortunate and almost been able to do what I want. But there's always been that little couple of restrictions that have knocked me.
Yeah. So this is the first time that you've really been in charge and get to
all of the land, about what I want to do on the land.
right.
That's because when you rent somebody's property, you do have to ask permission to put structures on or change the lay of the land greatly and stuff like that. So Command wouldn't let me do a couple of things that which I knew would improve the business and bring pay monies back to me for the monies that I'm putting into the business and things like that. And there's the field in Sydney that I bought into. As you know, I wasn't Mr. 51%. That made things difficult. And the people whose field I very first started at and had for just on 20 years, the Mount Whitefield, which made paintball Pete's, they gave me a lot of freedom, but I always had to worry about upsetting the property owner. I always had to worry about upsetting the property owner's son, who was an absolute bane to my existence. And
was in New South Wales?
Yes, that was in New South Wales, yes, in Sydney. And it got to a point where when my wife died from cancer and, we owed no money, we owned our own home. I had this business and I had it in two different places, and I just thought I can just let my young bloke and one other run the place and just live off the small profit that comes off the Newcastle field. I'm just going to walk away from this field here. Of course, my wife had, I'd lost my wife Debbie to cancer. Mm-hmm. And when she was diagnosed cancer, I stopped working at all at paintball. I just, stayed at home and looked after her and, backwards and forwards from specialists and all that type of stuff. And unfortunately, my son just didn't quite take control. Excellent worker, great paintball referee, great kid, just no management skills. Well, the property owner, lovely old coot, and if it wasn't for him agreeing for us to have the paintball field there, I probably would never have been Paintball Pete. So, I was very thankful to him, and I would not insult him in any way, shape or form. And the big crunch was with the property owner down there, just getting too cheeky, getting too out of control, making female customers and staff not happy coming there or working there or staying too long there. And his son was 34 going on 14, 15. And I know, just to cause damage, just lie through his teeth. And it got to a stage where it got really bad when I stopped being down there. And, when Deb died, I've gone down there and just saw the way the place came, and I just thought, that's it. I'm closing it down. And I didn't sell it, didn't even offer to sell it. I ran away overseas, and that's how I started all my international stuff in Europe and in the UK, working and refereeing and rebuilding fields over there. Yeah, so then came back and closed it down and went and got a loan on the house and bought into a place, and 3 years later got the majority of my money back, and not all the hundreds of hours and the occasional humiliation of being on the end of some of his decisions. Yeah. I didn't have to deal with that anymore. So we come here and look at this. I'm really glad we moved to, even though I spent more money, I'm glad we really come to Rock Hill. Everything is within 10-minute drive from here. There's so many food places, so many shops, so many good shops, doctors, everything else like that. So, we're pleased about moving here. There's a lot of growth here. We're getting customers every weekend, not like we were at Command Decisions. Some weekends we get probably 5. Some weekends we might even get 25 or 30. But, it was picking up after nearly 3 years. Business was starting to sort of like slow, the 2 years start to show improvement and the light that shine up ahead. And then the pandemic had hit, and that was it. Right. No one came out for months. We closed for 2 months.
Yeah. How many
Yeah.
people you got coming in on a weekend in Rock Hills now?
Well, we're averaging anywhere from just under 100 to anywhere up to 160, 170.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's enough
Yeah.
people to really have teams and games and
Oh,
all that good stuff.
we can. Yeah, see, once again, they don't. So they're used to just rocking up, getting their gear and equipment, and then a ref take them out to a field and throw them into a game and then walk back while the refs were looking after that game, right? And we don't work like that, right? Once a game starts, you can't enter a game once a game starts.
So you have to wait until the game's over and then
Yeah. Well, when a game's over, they got to come back and want to put more air in their guns. They want to put more paintballs in their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another 10 to 15 minutes. So they miss out for half an hour and they start to get cranky. It's like, guys, book. If you really want to come and play, if you just want to join general population, you have to wait until the next game comes in. Simple as that. So you want to bring 15 or more, book. Throw your $10 a head deposit in. And so when you get here, your ref will be ready for you, your group, to go as slow or as fast as you want.
So you gave them an option. They're
starting to understand now. And so we're starting to get groups. And the guys that the enthusiasts, right, the guys with their own gear and whatnot, they start to hang around a little bit more. Now they're starting to, which is good. There's another reason why I like doing paintball. I'm good at it.
Yes.
They're all starting to buddy up now. And so what they'll do is they'll go, we'll see you next Sunday. We'll say, look, we're going to come down on this Sunday. And so all of a sudden there's a group of 15 or more of them, and they go out to play with like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
And that way then you haven't got the guys with all the good gear and equipment playing against the poor rentals.
Right.
And shooting the shit out of them. We're getting there.
It sounds great. It sounds great. You've traveled all over the world. You said rebuilding paintball fields.
Yes.
Tell me some stories about doing the rebuilds. What does a rebuild in a paintball field entail?
All right. Well, okay. All right, I'll give you two examples. One in the UK and one in Australia. The one in the UK, they had an absolutely huge tyre wall field, just rows and rows and rows of tyres.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they're always falling down. They're not real happy. They get water in them too much, and you get a lot of mosquitoes in some countries.
Right, yeah.
Right, in some countries, UK, you don't. So anyway, I went in there, and I was at that stage when I first met these people. I was driving around Europe and the UK and Wales assessing paintball fields that could take big games, 1,000 people plus. And I'd met this guy at Oklahoma D-Day. He got me over to run the referees at this thing. And that spawned to a job where I was assessing for him. I was driving around all the paintball fields in the UK and some in Europe and France to assess, do videos on it, write reports out, things like that. Well, anyway, this one field I went to in Harrogate, the guy said to me there, he said, look, how long are you in for? And I told him, and he said, do you think you can do something with my field? I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I've been told you've travelled a lot of fields and things like that and whatnot. What would you do here? And I'm going, tyres, they smell after a while, especially if
right, yeah.
And so I said, look, make mounds out of them. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, make a big circle with the tyres and then bring the tyres in a little bit so they end up coning, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The centre's got the thing. And so he put all these up. And I've gone, you get to a certain height, which was just a little bit above adult height. And they'd still stay there. They all still hung together. And so, we changed this just using the same materials that he had here. We just put them into a different shape and made them so like there was really no corners. You really had to play in the 8, in the O clock, the 6s and the 3s and 9s to try and hide from people. It just wasn't a flat board. He had a helicopter in the middle too of the field, which we then surrounded, but we surrounded it with a tyre field. But instead of just end on end, we put them on like bricks, end on end, and then the next one was halves. So the halves were sitting, a full was sitting on two halves on my hands, on different angles. Sorry, yeah, we put it in bricklaying fashion. You try to create atmosphere. But my greatest one was in Australia. One of the fields in Sydney had a large area cleared by the high power lines people, the real high, high power, the big ones. Mm-hmm. Well, they come through with a mulcher and just mulch everything in a big strip either side of it, and it goes through the paintball field. And where they did this, it created sort of like enough for a beach landing, if you know what I mean, right? And all I could see there was a sort of beach. Well, it took myself and 2 other guys and $6,000 in wages and materials to build 3 landing craft big enough, mock landing craft big enough to hold at least 35 people. Right.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and we put we put dirt berms out. We made small tanks out of 50-gallon drums. You can put 9 together in a way so they look like one-man tanks and things like that, with a bit of carpentry into it and whatnot. So we did all that. Now, Australia is probably one of the most expensive places to play paintball in the world. And this place that I was at, they're famous for all their high-end upgrade guns. Well, anyway, they rented out 305 or 310 or whatever it was, players with their own gear and rentals turned up. And a lot of the extremely high-end guns were rented out in packages, right? High rate of fire, electronic jobbies, space guns, laser guns. Well, the way that we built the seawall, the fortifications, we got the special effects guys come in with the smoke and the what's the name. So in 3 one-hour games that day, we turned over $185 average per person.
Wow.
And there was 308 people, something like 73 or $74,000 in money we turned over just by creating the right atmosphere.
Right. So people came. So you're kind of like you're creating this, like you said, this stage where there's some imagination, and you got.
Yeah. There was smoke. There was explosions. That you give them the jazz, and even at Oklahoma D-Day, Dwayne Converse gave me carte blanche on a machine that was a little bit too big for what we wanted to do, but he let me rebuild Sword Beach, so things were a little bit more even and a little bit more tidy and professional, which he should have done in the first place. So if you're listening to this, Dwayne, I'm sorry, mate, but you dropped the ball.
So what are you going to do in Rock Hill, South Carolina? What are you going to build?
Well, all right. Well, we've already agreed to have this area re-landscaped. We've got bulldozers coming in, so we build it up over the wet area so it has all drainage. We're putting in a regulation NXL size field, and we're also putting in a mounds field. Yeah, and I'll have that there. We'll have the scenario. We had a very successful airsoft event for our first one. We put on an airsoft day so they could go out and try, and Tyler, who was my field manager at Command Decisions, who's now my business partner, who I'm really thankful for, that he's my business partner. We get along. Sure, we pull faces at each other occasionally. To be honest with you, if it wasn't him and Kathy here, I wouldn't. I probably would have never have taken it on.
Good to have the
and
support.
such.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. I'm very thankful. Very
Yeah.
thankful. Yeah.
So you're gonna what type of scenario game do you want to be putting on?
Oh, okay. Well, I know that. Well, for the paintball one and the airsoft. Look, I want to, as you know, as I said to you about the boutique paintball field back in Sydney, I want to do boutique big games. So they pay their entry or 75% deposit. Right? When they turn up on their day, there's an event T-shirt in their size for them. Their lunch is supplied. There'll be Gatorade and water supplied for them. Paid referees would be out there. There'll be a segregated area off for them to have put their gear and equipment. The car park's huge here, so there's a lot of things that we'd like to offer, so that your entry, it'll have your first box of paint already in there, and so when you turn up on the day, you're all paid for, so that it's all tucked away, it's ready to go. And so if you do want to splurge on that little something else, you've got that bit of extra money.
Right. Yeah.
They buy things. Yeah. So I want to start introducing that over here.
Cool.
So that, I spoke to the T-shirt people, and I spoke to food vendors. They're happy to a certain amount per head, and they just dish it out to them as they come up and go from there.
Simplifies it, especially if you're going to come in from a long distance away, that if all of that's already handled, you're good. From a consumer, from standpoint, it's nice, buy your one ticket and know you got everything you need to play, plus lunch is already provided. You're going to have a place to park. You're going to be, your area is going to be set aside. Cool.
Yeah.
Good luck with all that. That sounds fantastic.
Well, we're going to try. Being an old golf course, they had a driving range here, so we've already got the NXL field and the Mounds field. Mm-hmm. They'll all be under lights as well. We'll be able to, we'll be able to play on. And we're in an industrial area, so we're allowed to go 24 hours if we want to.
Nice. Do some night games.
We'll be certainly doing that.
Yeah,
and we've already got ourselves together a competition team who are training as we speak. They've been training every weekend, and they're all starting to get their act together, and we'll see what happens.
Wonderful.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
You're rolling. If you're getting 100, 150 people on a weekend already, and you haven't been there, how many months have you actually been open for business?
Well, since the 5th of December.
Yeah, so barely.
Yeah.
What?
And this is the quietest month. This is supposed to be the quietest month. So.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. Be exciting to see where you are a year from now.
Yeah, hopefully here and not sent back to Australia.
Right. Yes. Yes. Hope all that goes well, so we can come and play at your field. That would be lovely. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Pete, this has been fantastic. I appreciate your time. Love the stories you've shared, and enjoy seeing the passion you have for paintball. This is Coach Christine Clark. This has been Forging a Life podcast. My guest today has been Paintball Pete Russell, who runs the Palmetto Hills Paintball Field in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Pete, this has been so much fun. Thank you for joining me and for sharing your stories.
My pleasure. I hope I wasn't too boring.
Not at all. You're great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, this is Coach Christine Clark. It was such an honor to talk with Paintball Pete Russell. Pete was one of those people back in the 80s that got the game of paintball off the ground in Australia and other places around the world. His passion for the game, his willingness to engage with other paintball managers to push the government for legalization and standards that allowed more people to be able to play the game of paintball. It's just fascinating to be connected with somebody who was there at the beginning, who was there at the start. Pete not only has a passion for paintball, he has deep integrity as well. In the conversation with Pete, he shares the elements that are absolutely necessary for anyone going into any type of business. Pete not only plays the game, he understands that there are different levels of players, and to run a business, you want to be able to accommodate all the different types of people that are going to be attracted to your business, your thing. I heard him talk about starting competition paintball, both in Australia and what he is currently doing at Palmetto Hills. Also, he started referee teams and is building referee teams here in the States. These are elements that speak to a broader vision of what's needed to have quality game and to have people come and engage, to be drawn in. When I asked Pete, what does a good referee look like? And he said ex-competition players, but then he says they have to feel it in their heart and in their head. You have to know the game, love the game, in order to be able to be an adequate referee for the game. And that's huge. It speaks to a natural quality of experience for all the players on the field. And what I heard from Pete and what I want to highlight for you is the certainty that he has about who he is and about his business that has come from experiences over the last 30 plus years. Pete has been able to have really outstanding opportunities to travel, to facilitate up-leveling of paintball fields and seeking out and scouting out places to hold huge scenario games. He has been a manager of paintball fields, bought into paintball companies, and understood what it's like to be limited in his options and what he can do because he didn't own the majority share. The period of time when he left the paintball company to be home and focus on his wife because she had cancer, he was spending his time and energy where he was needed most. And being an entrepreneur, we have that option to focus on what's important in life at the time. And what you'll hear in Pete's story when you listen, in his absence, the management of the paintball field went downhill. He was focused where he needed to be with his wife, and the management of the paintball field just went awry. To the point that after his wife dies, when he returns to that field, he just shuts it down. Pete does not speak to the pain of that time of his life. In this, I hear lessons for us, that when you are in the business of what you were born to do, you stay with it. You learn, you grow, you find the next opportunity, the next piece, that next step up that lets you continue to be in the business of which you are passionate about, and to have gratitude for everything that it gives you back. It was particularly poignant when Pete shared his gratitude of everything that paintball has given him. It was poignant to have this big, tall, tough, balls-out paintball player catch his throat and get a little teary when he talks about everything that this venue given him. And that deep appreciation and love of what you do, I think, is unique in this world. The other thing that had me just cheering when Pete was talking about the boutique Pete games, the detailed vision he had of what that looked like, with event t-shirt, lunch, water, Gatorade, paid ref, a box of paint, everything you need to just come in and play, all prepackaged. That was so cool. In my coaching with people, getting them to the point of not just a general vision, but down to the nitty-gritty details of this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to be like. And Pete just has it, and he knows exactly what he's creating. And for me, that was wonderful, exciting to have him share that. You can find Pete at Palmetto Hills Paintball Field in Rock Hill, South Carolina. This is Christine Clark, and this has been Forging a Life.